Your Partner in Success Radio is a free business podcast with host Denise Griffitts. It's all about great stories, conversation, and context to help you move your business and life forward with actionable tips and advice from her guest experts. To listen and subscribe, just find us on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you consume your podcasts.
Welcome to Your Partner in Success Radio. My guest today, Robert Feldman, is the co-founder and CEO of WOWS, WOWS Insurance Services. And WOWS is a pioneering company specializing in fire insurance solutions tailored for California's unique challenges. But we're going to expand. We're going to be talking about what he's up to nationwide as well. And he returns to continue that conversation that we had about, oh, I hate to even say this, it hurts my stomach, the California fire insurance crisis. And 1 hour simply wasn't even enough to cover the information that he has to share. Now, as a sought after speaker and industry expert, Robert educates realtors, homeowners, and industry professionals on navigating the complex landscape of fire insurance. He serves on numerous task forces collaborating with insurance carrier leadership to tackle the state's, and now I think nationwide, the state's pressing insurance challenges. Robert, welcome back to the show. It's good to have you here. But before we jump into today's discussion, could you share what topics we'll be covering that we just didn't have enough time
Oh
to
my
cover
goodness.
last time? It was a big
Yeah. I,
conversation.
I was going to say, gosh, it's first of all, thank you so much for having me back. It's an honor to be back on your podcast. It's these kind of things that are going to help really turn the tides for consumers nationwide. And why it's so is really we were talking about last time California, and I think what we're going to get to, as you mentioned a little bit more into the whole approach of what's going on nationwide and the challenges in different parts of the country to go along with, kind of how we're building what we're building as a framework can be used by insurance companies nationwide, which is really what we're going to see continuing to go more and more. Almost every section of the United States, whether it's the Western United States, which we deal with fire, the Southeast deals with all kinds of issues regarding hurricanes and tornado, and you have the Midwest dealing with tornadoes. You have the Northeast that deals with a lot of the, not as bad, but a little bit more of the frost and things of that nature. Every part of the United States is now dealing with weather-related issues that are really challenging insurance companies to be solvent, to be there for consumers. As we all know, the worst thing ever, and I see it a ton here still in California as we're starting to expand into different states, is I still deal with consumers. I like to be very consumer facing. So when I'm doing speaking engagements, things that there's a lot of consumers that we will be helping with get to the right places and seeing what the devastation of what the rates are and how they're increasing. Well, I'm sorry to say that's kind of the norm nationwide. And what's going on is really, as we mentioned in the very first we talked about in the meeting, is Einstein's theory of insanity. The insurance industry doing the same things over and over again to combat these issues and expecting this different result. So first and foremost, California is being affected, but what's really interesting is from a Western United States, there's really about 7 to 8 other states that are going down this same road. And really the theme that I think we're going to see more and more, and I just see it, is that as much as we don't like to hear this, is that there's going to be more and more of a partnership of consumers, insurance companies, and government. And the reason for it is that I use the example of FEMA. Flood insurance is a national program, and national program for obviously flood damage for consumers. And a lot of consumers are protected under flood. Well, as I see in California and as I see in the Western United States with fire, Cal Fair Plan as an example, I think this is going to be more of the norm. I really do, as we continue to go on, is that more and more states are looking into and building similar fashions of the California Fair Plan, and that in most of the Western United States, you're going to see this very thing where there's going to have to be a form of a policy for first layer to take care of that really first risk. In the Southeast with hurricanes, they've always had different programs that are there. I think you're going to see more and more of an active program involvement for insurance companies to be solvent. It's going to be really more of what they need to see. Tornadoes being in the Midwest is the same idea. So when the challenges are going to always be there of how do we balance, really, how do we balance what level of an interaction of supported by the states, or is it a federal government support like FEMA? These are all great questions that we still work on and build. But I do think what we're doing right now with the WILES program as examples of how to re-engineer insurance programs and policies are going to be used and taken over and over again into different parts of the United States as we continue our success. One of the biggest compliments we've gotten recently with our WILES program of re-engineering is, as I explained last time, there are what's called reinsurance companies. These are the big money support for major insurance companies in London, as you've heard, Lloyd syndicates and different companies in Bermuda and different parts of the world. The biggest honor we've received recently is a lot of these companies have their own programs in California right now, or the Western United States, and they're now asking us to support their programs and even wholesale, in essence, to bring insurance brokers to bring additional programs or home insurance programs to California, but the Western United States. The last honor we had recently, I
Oh,
have
go
to
ahead.
say,
I'm sorry.
hey, you're good. The last honor is there's a big investment fund coming together to look to build an insurance carrier to really work with WOWs to be more of a backstop for that, in essence, for those states that don't have the California Fair Plan. So these are
And I've
all
got a
excellent. These are all excellent things and excellent directions. And what's really exciting, Denise, is look at how much changed just in the really a month and a half since we last talked.
right, right. A couple of months now. And I wanted to go back to FEMA in a minute, but congratulations. I know you've been working hard on this. Bef-
Absolutely.
I mean, you really have. So before we go too much further, tell people very quickly what the California Fair Plan is, and then we can kind of move over to FEMA.
Yep.
Listen, I'm in the deep south. I live literally equidistant between Katrina and Rita. Literally. I
Oh,
bought my house right between those two storms. Had to. You know, if you didn't buy your house the day it came up and was listed, you weren't going to find property because Texas and New Orleans were sending all of their high level people who had been, lost their
hmm
homes or,
yeah,
just out of business over here. I literally bought my house the day it listed for the price it listed for. I
yeah.
didn't quarrel. I said, I'll take it. I hadn't even seen it yet.
All terms, right?
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
true thing. You signed for all terms, which
I
is very
did.
unique in real estate. It's because as we both know in real estate, usually there's back and forth between buyers agents and sellers agents, and and you're negotiating what the terms and things of nature. When it's a crazy market, it's pretty wild how people will just sign the deal, and that's a great example of that.
And fortunately, I hadn't even seen the house, but my real estate agent loved it and I trusted her. I
Hmm.
didn't see it until I got back from 80 miles. I was away from home. And I didn't see it until 9 o'clock that night after I had already signed everything online.
Wow,
Fortunately, Robert, I love my house. I still
that's
have it.
great.
I love my house, but things happen and you have to be able to jump when you can.
Well, that's also why it's important. You just did a commercial for realtors, basically
Right.
nationwide, because that is the greatest example of having someone on your side to help defend you. Just like how insurance brokers, the same idea. Having somebody work with you to defend your most important assets. That's really what an insurance broker is. That's it.
That's true. My former husband, I didn't trust his judgment because he just wanted out of the rent house that we had moved into
Yep.
after I sold. He was going to take anything, and I wasn't. So
Yeah.
fortunately, I had her on my side. She just said, but I wanted to ask FEMA, listen, and I
Hmm.
started to tell you, FEMA is, in my view, in trouble. And we had a lot of trouble with them during Hurricanes Katrina and
Yeah.
Rita, a lot. And I'm watching what's going on now with, you know, these huge, massive storms and how
Yeah.
they're behaving. And I don't know where FEMA is going to be at the end of all this. I guess we just
Well,
wait and see.
you're going to need to, and this is again goes back to the conversation of involvement of our government, and what's the level. You and I joke all the time about not being political, and I really am not. I work with both sides of the aisle. When it comes to state of California, I work with different regulatory entities, because really what I'm trying to do is make sure we accomplish. I don't care where you are. We need to make things change. Well, that's going to be the really kicker, or the really question mark is is the federal government, is this going to be a state run programs, or is it going to be a federal run program, or is it going to be a state that's supported by the federal government programs, or are they going to stay completely out of it? And what happens is there are areas in the United States right now that don't have a version, as I would say, of the California Fair Plan for fire areas. And I'll use Colorado as an example. Colorado just passed a version of the California Fair Plan, but missed. They did a $750,000 coverage. Well, I'm sorry, that doesn't rebuild on almost any house now, anywhere you are. Most homes can't be rebuilt for $700,000.
Not even close.
Not even close. And so for a lot of consumers, that was like, it was like they would have almost been better off not to attempt it. I will say I deal with a lot of different regulatory places around the United States. The one that I still say is, to me, is one of the friendliest, and the ones that are really cutting edge, working on and trying to create new alternatives, is Nevada, believe it or not. Nevada has, and
About that. We talked
yeah,
about that the last time
last
you were
time,
here.
and gosh, every time I go and meet with them, I just am more and more impressed with them, Denise, because they see the problem coming for everybody in the state. They know that this is not just a problem for Nevada, that it's going to be all there, and they are looking at, and they're asking us to help build solutions that are very forward thinking instead of reactive thinking. And so it's just,
Good.
these are things that we're gonna. I mean, if you're gonna, can you see? You and I could talk about on and off on for the next couple of years
I
as we
know.
continue to build things.
Right.
Nothing's going to change, because to your point with these hurricanes and what happened with the terrible hurricanes they're dealing with down in Florida, they're gonna have to reorganize. There's different attachment points. I work with reinsurance companies that do in essence support a lot of the carriers. They're backing off more and more and driving higher and higher rates. So there's going to have to be a balance of some type, or the facetious comment, you're going to have homes that have $100,000 policies. Well, consumers can't afford that. So then what if there's a balancing act? So it's a really tricky balancing act, because what you're really having to do is you have to balance local, state and federal government, with insurance companies, with reinsurance companies, and consumers, to balance all of this out, and really try to. I hate to find almost the three bear approach. What's just right? What makes sense? It's going to
Any
get trickier and
question.
trickier.
It is, and I agree with you. I'm watching it and thinking, and I don't know much about insurance, but I do know that I lost my insurance after
Mm-hmm.
Katrina, not after Katrina, after Delta a few years back because they went bankrupt.
Yep.
Yeah, and
Yep.
it's not unusual, and we can't get flood insurance where I live. It's
Yep.
not available to us. I
Yep.
didn't have flooding, but I did lose my roof, and there
Mm-hmm.
was a lot of other damage. Fortunately, the roof was fixed before they left the building, but
Yeah.
if a lot of it did not get fixed, it just was never going to get fixed. And insurance is so, property insurance is just incredibly, insanely expensive.
Yep. And there's going to be changes, innovations that are really coming out. I use this all the time, where I see like how houses are being built and how people are making changes in different parts of the United States. Um, an example, like in the Gulf, homes are built really second floor up, where the first floor blows away when you're on the edge of the Gulf, where it's a garage on the first floor, and that it's built intentionally. I'm seeing technology and really neat things where they're building homes now to withstand the effects. So that would be the same as fire. That's the same as earthquakes. That's the same for tornadoes or hurricanes. As we get better technology, we have to look. There's like on the Western United States, there are burn patterns. Well, how do things burn? Well, before you build 800 homes into an area, are you burning it are you building it in a way to burn it right through a fire path where it has no possible way of defending itself? What are you doing to
Wow.
mitigate these issues?
Robert, how is that even allowed? If I'm sure, this is just my way of
Mm-hmm.
thinking, that the research has been done, all of the work has been done. They know
Mm-hmm.
good and well it's prone to fires, but they still
Well,
build.
they still build. And now, with that being said, if you're going to build something in the path of things, what are you doing to mitigate these issues? It's almost, Denise, it's almost like the story of, a house. When you talk about building a house, it's a lot cheaper to build a house per square foot than it is to retrofit or change a house per square foot. Okay. So when you get into the cost of things, so like there's issues regarding power lines. These are things that are coming out now from on the Western United States that they're realizing. Well, there are companies now that are coming out supporting how to change the power lines so they don't cause fires. There's all kinds of things that you can do to offset these probable risks. Getting better, like the Western United States, all the different fire departments are getting better because of AI and things of nature. So as we get better at things, that can help reduce risks. Well, by reducing risks, that can help reduce insurance costs by reducing claim frequency. Consumers, we're going to be all in this together. There were a lot of, I'm sorry to say this, in California and things, a lot of consumers, were taken advantage of by a lot of restoration companies and things that were told that they had damage that they weren't. I mean, this is I use the term all hands on deck, Denise. Everybody has to get involved in this. We all have to be involved in this, whether it's in Florida, whether it's in Oklahoma, whether it's in Texas, whether it's in Washington, Montana, California, Nevada. This is an all hands on deck. We have to make changes collectively. If not, we're going to run ourselves out. One of the things that I talk about with insurance all the time, Denise, is insurance companies are a business like any other business for anybody out there listening right now. If you're in business as a realtor or a business as a CPA or a business as a shop owner of any type, and you're losing money, when you lose money, you make changes. If you can't make changes, what happens, Denise? You go out of business.
Bankrupt.
You
That's
go bankrupt.
exactly
You
like
go out of
mine
business.
did. And it happened literally overnight. I'm telling you, my crew had no sooner left than the next day, and they did a terrific job. But the next day I get a message, sorry, we're leaving. It's like, really?
Yeah.
But I've
Yep.
got other stuff. Well, they couldn't help.
Yep.
They were done. They went into
Yep.
receivership. I think that's bankruptcy, isn't it?
Yeah, receivership usually means that the claims in typical fashion, if it's receivership for insurance, is when the claims estimations are larger than their reserves.
Gotcha. Well, that happened because it
Yeah.
was, I mean, we had back-to-back hurricanes and two of them came
Mm-hmm.
knocking at my door, but Delta did the most damage.
Yep.
And I mean, I guess I should have expected it, but when you're the one on the receiving end of going, what do you mean you're not going to fix it? You don't stop and think they just couldn't. Things have gone badly wrong for them. You're just mad.
Well, and we see it all the time. We're placing consumers or helping consumers get into insurance policies, and different markets open up at different times. So one of the trickiest things, Denise, you want to talk about a really tricky thing, is trying to work with a consumer through a broker or direct, trying to help them get to the right place, getting them to the right place. And then once in a while, the terrible thing happens where a different company pops up and offers a lower rate. And then that consumer gets upset. But see, what's interesting about that is at the same time, that same consumer was running the chance of not having insurance because they're in a fire zone. So making sure they secured an insurance policy was most important. But then, of course, it's always the second guessing thing. Well, I'm sure that happens across the board with all insurance companies, second guessing. That's why they go into a ship. No insurance company, no business goes into business with the idea of going bankrupt.
I actually felt bad for them because I had a couple conversations, if you will, via email, and you could tell that they were just sick. They were
Yeah,
so upset. They were not, it wasn't okay, gotta go, guys. Hope everything's okay on your end.
yeah,
That wasn't it
yeah.
at all.
Uh, that's so terrible. That's so terrible. And that's the tough part of this whole thing is when you get into the greater scheme of how this all works is, insurance is a business. That's the thing I really preach. There are a lot of consumers out there still think that insurance companies are givens, like they should be. It's like that they have unlimited money and unlimited resources, and that they should and it should pay. And when a person loses their house entirely, I agree with them. That's absolutely what insurance is for. But there's a lot of middle ground where, I mean, like an example, we're all going to be seeing higher deductibles. We're all going to have a
Already
bigger
seeing it.
share.
Yeah.
We're going to see it. I mean, our WOWs program for larger homes. We're going to see larger deductibles, $50,000, $100,000 for these bigger homes. There's going to be a lot of this because if not, insurance companies are not going to be viable. Smoke damage ravaged a lot of insurance companies, not just in California, but it really ravages it through the Western United States. Again, I'm sorry I lean the Western United States, but I will, Denise, promise to keep going nationwide. But again, a lot of the smoke
Keep
damage
going
claims,
because we
yeah,
see the same things everywhere. What you're talking about in the West is we see the same things. In fact,
things
I was
is,
on Twitter
yeah,
not too long ago, and I'm not going to mention the company name, the insurance name. It's well known. Um, but there's a lot of talk in on this one particular thread that some of these, and it was a ruined house. The house was just destroyed. There were pictures of it.
mm-hmm,
It was just, oh my God, flattened to the ground. But this particular company decided they were going to pay, oh, a 16th of what the house was worth, I'm guessing,
yeah, yep.
because they how do I want to say this? They changed the
The guidelines, there are
yeah,
guidelines
the
of what's covered,
guidelines. Yeah, they changed, that's not it. They changed the
replacement cost.
no, and I had it in my head. They just, what do you
Mm-hmm.
call it? The categories, the
Oh,
categories, the
yeah,
yeah,
the coverage categories of
exactly.
what
And
they're
it
willing to
was,
cover.
I looked at that and yeah, there's going to be a big old lawsuit, I promise you.
Yeah, that gets into really tricky situations because then really is it the insurance company's responsibility or fault? Is it the insurance agent or broker's fault for explaining, or is there a consumer responsibility here, or what? So there you have. There's an example, right?
Right. That's what I was trying to get to.
Yeah,
Who made
who's
the boo-boo
responsible?
here?
Who made the boo boo
Right.
here? Who made the boo boo here? And so there are a lot of consumers. I'll never forget there was a claim in the Malibu fire, and I'll use this as an example. When things happen, I don't think people do this intentionally, but we tend to forget things. A consumer took an insurance policy with very high deductibles, beyond the normal scope because they wanted to drive their premium down. So, as a broker, we intentionally made sure we spelled out that this was against our advice, and here are the deductibles, and we needed them to sign to confirm that this is what they're really wanting to make sure, because it's like almost like a disclosure, like you see everywhere else. Well, Malibu fire happens, the client has damage, and um, long story short, this is where it comes into play. And what happened was the consumer had a claim, was very upset about the claim, and was coming after us to say, this is what we need, this is what we need, for coverage. And it's like, no, we gave you a separate disclosure specifically spelling this out. Well, the consumer then forgot, and we showed it to them, and they understood that was part of what they did. So it comes into the play of what really comes into play is, where does it come into play? Does that make sense? Where does that 16th responsibility, where does it come into play?
I guess what I'm trying to understand, because listen, most people don't understand insurance. I mean, I don't
Yep.
think we're meant to. I don't think it's something we study in high school. We don't know
Yeah.
anything about
Well,
it
and
till we're
that's
like, oh crap, we need it, you know?
yep, exactly. That's the thing that what's really gets troubling to some degree, is it's one of those things where it's just troubling, where it's, where's that balance, right? No, and consumers do not need to understand all the nuances of, it's like, don't be your own doctor, right? Or your own lawyer or your own CPA. Well, I'm sure CPAs handle their own stuff, I would jokingly say. But with that being said, in general, we have experts for these things, but there's also a level of balance. It almost sounds like a cliche Star Wars thing. Balance to the force. Where's the balance in all of it? And that's what it's the ongoing battle, Denise. The ongoing battle. One of the things we've talked about many times, I've said many times, and I think we talked about it last on the show. Why are there 50 different insurance departments? That means that there's 50 different types of, every state has a different insurance coverage. Why?
Well, that's a good question. And I think we're going to see some trimming of that, I guess. I don't know.
Well,
We're going to have to
I
wait and
don't know.
see.
I don't know.
You don't
I mean, but
think?
like I know California and Nevada as an example.
Right.
I mean, you cross the border. I mean, it really comes into play up in the northern part of Nevada. So you go across what's called the 80. It's kind of a scary place called Dahmer's Pass. If you go from, if you're,
Multiple times. It'll scare the
yeah,
crap out of you, even if
yeah,
it's not snowing.
even if it's not snowing, it's a pretty scary pass. And so you're separated by 30 or 40 miles, 50 miles, and you have one set of insurance for those homes versus something else that's 30 or 40 miles away. Different auto
What
insurance
about?
coverages.
Right, right.
I mean, it's just, these are all things that I think, again, could be solved. These are things that help change the tides. Really,
Exactly. And
yeah,
you
that's what we're
talk
really
with
into.
I know you are. And I'm so glad that you are and that you're talking with other people. And I know you spend a lot of time talking with other insurance companies and people who are
Mm-hmm.
whatever insurance services. There's a
Yep.
lot of things that go to it other than, hey, I need a policy. What are some of the things that you're hearing about now that have you going, we're working on it, or hey, that's not a bad idea? What is really worrying people in your industry?
Really, the industry is general. Well, actually, the overall biggest concern, if you were to say the number one for the entire industry, is what's called capacity. Capacity is okay. So if you have a house and it's a $2 million total coverage, okay, that's rebuild, personal property, additional living. I mean, every coverage you add it all up, whether it's 2 million or 20 million. That's the check that the insurance company has to write in the event there's a total loss, right? Gone. Whether you're in the southeast and it floods, or it's in the central, it's tornadoes, or in Western United States it's fire. What is the check? Well, when it comes into it, insurance companies have what's called capacity. If you add up all the $2 million homes, well, times 100 homes is, simple as $200 million, is times 1,000 homes is $2 billion. Capacity is the number that shows what's the maximum you're able to take and be solvent as an insurance company. Well, that's where reinsurance companies come in place to help support the insurance companies. These are like the Lloyd's companies like Brit, and all these different carriers that are the big ones from different parts of the world come in and support those companies. Well, as you lose more and more money, the capacity from the reinsurance companies dries up. Well, that's the really scary thing,
Right.
because if the reinsurance dries up for a certain section of the United States, that then affects it. Puts a tremendous amount of pressure on the insurance companies. Well, most insurance companies, even the state farms, the large companies, have to react to that kind of pressure by either getting rates or canceling policies that then affect the consumers. So the number one thing that is, if you were to ask, really my biggest concern is capacity. Having the money, the wherewithal with the reinsurance companies to support the industry. So every time we make a change with WOWs, every time we can affect change and show better loss patterns to reinsurance companies, it encourages those reinsurance companies to put additional proceeds or additional money into. Because reinsurance companies don't just do property. There are reinsurance companies that do terrorism coverage or cyber coverage or every type of insurances you could, aviation coverage, all these different areas of coverage. Well, if a reinsurance company believes it's losing money on property or catastrophe losses, it gets to a point of where it will move its assets or its money or its quote unquote balance sheet, meaning the capacity, to other insurance lines. So it's always
I get it now. Keep going.
And it's a balancing act. The analogy I would almost use thinking about it right now, it's like a room full of kids and trying to get the parents' attention. Right? So which is the good kid? Which is the bad kid? The bad kid, doesn't get the right kind of attention, I should say. But you mean they get, so it's a balancing act across the board. Everything we do in the industry for property is to make changes to make it a better value for insurance companies and reinsurance companies to be involved.
And I had talked about reinsurance a bit the last time you were here, and I admit I didn't really understand. I got some of it at a basic level, but I'm glad that you're going deeper into it. And you just mentioned, insurance, it gets canceled. And I understand if your company goes bankrupt, I get that. What I'd like to ask you about though is when, policies get canceled and you don't really know why they got canceled.
Yeah, there are different things. You'll see this nationwide right now. Companies are going in and out of markets. It's really important to be an advocate, to be aggressive on, making sure you have, what's necessary for your renewals. Like we talk about in the Western United States, it's fire hardening as an example. In the Southeast, building things to make sure that you can survive hurricanes, to do the things that are necessary. In the Midwest, tornadoes are tough. Obviously there's no bullet. That's the one. I always joking around and say there's probably the one element that I don't think there's really a way of defending is a tornado.
Listen, I have lived through hurricanes forever and ever. Yeah. Amen. And I'll be honest with you, and I've said this before, once you've done your hurricane prep or you've evacuated, which these days is darn near impossible, especially since, Hurricane Katrina.
Yeah.
But once you've done your hurricane prep and you're ready, you've mitigated everything you think you can possibly mitigate, you might as well sit back and enjoy it because hurricanes are magnificent to watch. They really are. Tornadoes scare the bejesus.
Yeah, that's earthquake and tornadoes are the same way.
You cannot predict them, and they will wipe you out.
Yep. They just do. California and the Western United States are really concerned about fire. And knock on wood, one of the things we're very lucky, since really there hasn't been a major earthquake. I'm knocking on wood. If you're hearing me knock on my forehead right now.
I do the same thing.
knock on my forehead, knock on my head and go, gosh, we hadn't had an earthquake in a long time. Since 1994 was the major one in California. And so these are all things. Get a hold of my
family for 3 days. I called. Finally, somebody answered. I went, oh, you're alive.
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing worked. You could not reach anybody.
Yep. It's just crazy. So, but again, these are all the things that we keep talking about more and more. The thing I will say to everyone out there that's listening right now is that the thing is, companies like WOWs are working to make the change, to help the industry change. And this is, again, whether it's a consumer group, whether it's a homeowners association, whether it's a insurance company, every time we're able to work with groups, it just makes it better. We're going to get better. There's a lot of pessimism right now regarding insurance. And I understand it. We've had a really rough cycle for really the last 5 to 10 years. Nationwide we have. And what happens though is is as long as we're not doing, I love that saying, Einstein's theory of insanity, where we keep doing the same things over, as long as we're willing to look at making changes, these are the key things that have to, because innovation is one of the greatest things about, I would say over and over again about us as being Americans, is that we constantly look at and look for innovation. There are some incredible companies out there that I love right now, that I would support, in any possible way. There's one called BurnBot that I think is spectacular. It's a machine that almost looks like a tank almost. And what it does is it does controlled burns, but it makes sure there's no sparks. It uses water to use the smoke as almost like a way of revitalizing the ground, so there's no smoke issues. And it clears areas to create fire breaks. These are all excellent things that really need to be looked at as more and more. As I mentioned earlier, the power line changes and changing over things that we have to put into the ground, or changes that will help support and keep these horrific fires away. Everything we do that gets better helps bring things to the table. In the Southeast, it's going to be the same way. In
Yeah,
the
I have
Midwest, the
no
same way.
doubt. I'm glad you brought up underbrush, because wasn't that a big issue with California some years ago? And
It still
I mean,
is.
things were
It still
burning and
is.
burning and burning because of the underbrush was just,
It is.
anybody that has a brain know that that
Yeah.
needs to be cleared out. But
Yeah, it's so crazy. It's so crazy. But again, there's a balancing act. The funny thing is, I study history. I always say that another saying I like is, those who don't study history are doomed to repeat it. And so California, before all of us were here, were really populated by several different Indian tribes. The Chumash, there's the Pachanga, different types of Indian tribes throughout California. And what was really interesting, talking about that controlled burn, when they would leave their, for their, from their winter camp to their spring camps, or vice versa, they lit everything on fire. They lit everything on fire, let everything burn,
absolutely.
and it revitalized. People don't realize, from an environmental standpoint, that there are certain plants or seeds that don't open or don't blossom unless there's a certain heat temperature. And so these are all things.
Yeah, we
I
do.
mean,
We burn our sugarcane fields.
yep, 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 yep,
When it's sugarcane season, you see the broken down trucks on the highway,
yep,
and you smell the sugarcane smoke because it's over.
yep,
They're burning those, it's cut,
yep.
they're burning them down.
Well, and see, imagine having a system where, instead of having the smoke be in the air, could you imagine if you actually had a system that would burn the fields in a way where they revitalize the ground? These are
And
things, that's
yeah,
the things that are the technology that
and
we
you called
need to,
it
was a
burn.
company called BurnBot.
That's what I thought you said. I'm
Yeah.
going to go look that up.
Yeah, I don't have any ties to them. This is
No,
not a
I don't
plug for
know.
them in any way, but it's just, when I see really interesting and neat things, I talk about them, because these are the things that I think affect the changes that we need, or that are necessary to affect change.
And homes up on stilts about 20 years ago. Well, it was around Hurricane Katrina and Rita.
Yep.
I'm very close to the Gulf of Mexico, about 40 miles as a crow flies. Eat a lot
Hmm.
of shrimp. I eat shrimp the way y'all eat chicken.
Oh, I would
I
be all over
love
that. I
boiled
love Gulf
shrimp.
shrimp. I
Oh,
love
me
Gulf
too.
shrimp. Oh,
I eat it all the time. In fact, I've got
I'm
a
in
bowl in
so
the
trouble.
fridge.
Yep. I make
Uh,
gumbo out of that. I make all kinds of good stuff out of shrimp.
I'll
Barbecue
just boil
shrimp.
them and
Oh,
eat them by themselves. That
yeah.
and a boiled egg, and
Yep.
I'm happy to go. But I noticed, right, and you're talking about, they're up, the first floor literally is open. Around here, you'll see elevators, depending on how nice the house is.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much the only thing that's in that area, is an
Yeah.
elevator to get you and your groceries up to
Yep.
the first and
Same
second,
foot.
the other
Yep.
floors.
Yep.
And I thought that was
Well,
very smart even back in the day.
Well, but see, that's what you would have to do. So in your area, if you're going to have a flood where the waters can rise 5 to 10 feet, wouldn't it make sense to have something where you don't have livable area anything less than 10 feet? These are
Learn
things that
after
help.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you learn after you've been smacked around enough. You go,
Yeah, this is,
maybe that
I mean,
didn't work.
exactly. If we all continue getting punched in the face, eventually we stop wanting to get punched. Insurance companies are no different. And so, there are a lot of things like in California or in the Western United States where I joke around about it all the time about how things are being built and why, there's what's called open exposed eaves and all these different things that where you have to close things off. You have to build homes differently. You have to.
You
You
do.
have
You
to. You
really
just do.
do.
You just
And
do.
it's smart to do it that way because, your chances of keeping your home longer
I
have
mean,
exponentially
oh,
increased.
it's just such a difference. It is such a difference.
I
Such a
wanted to go
difference.
back to WOWs because I don't think we
Yeah.
really are giving that
No.
the
Well,
love
you
that
know
it
what?
needs. So
Well,
let's talk
well,
about
you're
that.
awesome. You're awesome. My big thing, and I say a million times, honored to be on here. I just want to make sure I help consumers in general. WOWs is really, I would say, if you're in a battle, it's the tip of the spear. It's what we're using to help change insurance, at least for us in the Western United States. And so, as I mentioned to you earlier, we are thrilled because we know we're on the right track when you get a lot of different people that are still wanting to, um, partner with us. As I mentioned earlier, big reinsurance companies want to partner with us on programs. When we continue to see more and more of that, that's the kind of stuff that shows we're doing the right direction to affect change. And
Of
that's
what
what we're
you're
here for.
doing. I mean,
Yep.
they really are seeing the value.
Yep.
So this wasn't happening, I don't think, the last time we spoke, and that was only
Yeah.
about 2 months ago.
Yep. So it's really exciting to see because what we were able to show is with the diversification of risk and be able to spread risk, a lot of the reinsurance companies now see us and want us to represent them as part of their program so that we can help really push forward, the change that's necessary, not just in California, but in the Western United States. Last week, as I mentioned to you, I brag about them all the time about the Nevada state regulators. I was with them in Nevada
Yeah, yeah.
last week. And there's a lot of exciting things continuing to change on and on. But I mean, that could almost be a whole other podcast. Would be the joke, Janice, is the exciting changes. We're just really excited. The thing that we say a ton for people is making sure they have right information, and especially if you're in California, the Western United States, getting people to the right places. That's what we're doing, and we pride ourselves on that.
And if I'm not mistaken, you really do want to see this expand across the country.
Yes, we're going to see. What will happen is I think with our WOWs program, really creative things about spread of risk and things, I think could eventually be the thing that really unlocks, really the magic key that unlocks how we fix insurance. Because what you're dealing with in Florida and what you're dealing with in Louisiana are oversaturation of markets.
Right. And North
So
Carolina, that's a god awful mess.
same thing. So if you have
Yeah.
oversaturation of markets due to one type of exposure, the best thing you can do is have other exposures in other parts of the United States that offset. The problem is most companies, a State Farm or things will have Allstate or Farmers have policies in all the places nationwide. The thing that's interesting is, in general, though, is it just becomes more and more of can we spread the risk and have it affect? We know we have the key to fix the Western United States. It continuing to improve to fix the United States insurance market will be the key things as we continue down that road in the future.
Robert, you had mentioned that we're talking about the consumer part of all of this because we can't just walk around and say, well, it's not my fault. They didn't tell me or I didn't know.
Yeah. Yep.
Where do consumers find education so they are making good
Mhm.
policy decisions? Like you mentioned earlier, here
You
comes this
have
guy
to
at
have
a
the trusted.
lower price and
It's
they
a
took it.
trusted advisor. Well, and the
Yes,
trusted
yeah,
advisor
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
So, and what happens is it's a really tough thing because sometimes the answers aren't what consumers want to hear. Well, listen, we all have a budget, and I understand that. We all do. But just because, and it's one of the words I hate the most when people use the word cheaper. I would eliminate that from our vocabulary.
I
Um,
agree.
Cheaper doesn't mean better. Okay, what is the best
You're
package?
going to
What's the
get
best?
screwed one way
Yeah,
or
I mean,
another.
another.
Promise you.
So
Yep.
so so because you saved $1,000, Is this a better policy? Now, if everything's equivalent and everything's like, hey, I understand you need to take the value, the cost value of being less. I agree with that. But again, like the consumer I mentioned earlier, there are times that people are binding policies not knowing what the future is, and then come up the other way where they're like, well, I could have got a policy for less. You're right, but you could have also not had a policy. So it becomes a balancing act. It really does.
Gary, listen, whether we're talking about fire insurance, we're talking about home insurance, we're talking about health insurance, insurance is not going to go away. We need
Nope.
it.
Yep.
And then I was fascinated, Robert, you talking about, and I didn't even think about this. I should have, because I like to think I'm smarter than my cat, but some days I'm not necessarily. But,
Nope.
terrorist insurance, all these, I
Oh,
had no
there's,
idea.
do you know that there's insurance for, there were insurance for both campaigns for the presidential election for their
I
events,
figured there had to be. Yeah.
for their events. And
Right.
so, and so you get into all these pressure points of what, it just, it's tricky. And so, what really insurance is for everyone out there, obviously we all know this, but I always like to reiterate it. It's a collection of money, money being put together to save off risk, where an insurance company then makes money off of the collection. So the idea is for them to lose, so when you take in $100, the insurance company wants to make money. So they have, the closer it is to $100 they pay in claims, the more likely they are to lose money. And if they lose money, they no longer offer that insurance policy. And so that's where it comes into play.
And that's why I think so many consumers are like, what the heck just happened? We don't
Yeah.
know. We don't
Yeah.
understand it.
Yep. It's tough.
It
It's
is.
very tough. It's very tough.
And you've been doing this for what, 25 years now?
I'm approaching almost 30 now, as scary as it sounds.
What?
Yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah, I'm getting
And
there.
see, I just found out the other day, I should have already known this, at my podcast, this one that we're talking on now is 16 years old, will be 17 in January. I don't know if I
Yeah.
should get it a driver's license or have a debutante ball. Something's gonna happen.
Well,
But
I
when you're
know it's
doing what you
November,
love, you don't
exactly.
know.
Well, and
You're
that's the
like,
thing. If
what the
people,
heck happened?
people ask me all the time, like, and been a long time doing this, right? So it was 98. So 98, it was actually November 28th, 98 when I was officially licensed. So let's think that out for a second. November 28th is coming up. And so it's 28, 98. So it's going to be 26 years, excuse me. It will be officially 26 years November.
Heck, that's Thanksgiving Day, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Hey, good for
Exactly.
you.
Happy
Well,
Thanksgiving is a
thank
joke.
you.
Yeah.
I know, and it is. I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I love to cook. Okay,
Yeah.
so I wanted. What else are we missing here? Because we've covered a lot in this podcast and
Mhm.
the last one, but what do you really want our audience to know?
The audience needs to know is that that is as tough as it seems right now when it comes to insurance, that there are changes coming and that there are solutions coming to the market. And I know it doesn't seem that way. And I know there are a lot of consumers out there that when they get their bill and they see it go up 20, 30, 50, 100%, that they're really upset. And it's understandable to be upset, but there are changes coming to help to try to stem the tides. So making sure that they're out in front of it, making sure they're talking not just to one trusted advisor. If you don't really have one that you believe is a trusted advisor, you need to really be talking to 2 to 3 different people at that point to verify what is possible, to help defend you. I do tell consumers right now that moving is not a good thing. Is that, obviously, if you've got a good insurance company, a great insurance company, hunkering down and going through this is the best thing you can do. But if it's a major difference in price, that I understand it. But there's sometimes, as we talked earlier, price is not everything. Price is not everything.
Well, here's a question. This is just off the top of my head. I mean, you're talking about stay with them even though the pricing has just gone through the roof, insane.
Yeah.
I'm hearing from you, at least I think I'm hearing from you, Robert, that things will get better and those prices can come down.
Yes. Well, and I think over
But
time
is
that can
that
be
ever
effective.
voluntary? That's my
Well,
question.
the market does. The market does. So what will happen is over time is one of those things that if you think about it, what will happen is, as with insurance companies and all businesses, if you're an insurance company and you drive rates and your rates are too high, and there are others that come into the market that are less, that kind of readjusts the rate.
That
You
makes
know,
sense.
and so at some point you're going to have a point of where you drive people into the market based on the cost of insurance. So, meaning insurance companies. So as that
Right.
continues to happen, that's the key thing.
So basically, once they start losing enough consumers, they're like, maybe we
Well,
need to
consumers,
rework this.
or exactly, or they see that they're getting relief through reinsurance companies. There's a whole host of things. As technology gets better, as we continue to do the things that make risks better. That's the
So,
number one thing everyone out there listening right now needs to hear. You need to look to see are you better? What can you do to make your home better?
similar thing,
That's
and
the
this is
thing.
with my car insurance because I really don't drive very much.
Yep.
I mean, I bought my house online, my car was delivered to me from Texas online, my groceries land on my doorstep. I don't
Yep.
even know why I have a car. I don't really need it, but I want it. It's mine.
In
It's paid
case
for.
it's in case emergency thing is what
In
we'll
case
say.
I have to evacuate. Yeah.
Exactly.
But I called my insurance when it came time for renewal. I called them and I said, "Listen, this is ridiculous for a car that drives maybe 100 miles a month, and that's pushing it." So they put a little thing on my car, and it
Mm-hmm.
lowered my price considerably.
Yep. 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 I think that's excellent.
I did too, and I don't like being tracked, but I did not want to pay that ridiculous
No.
amount for
Well,
car
and especially in that
insurance.
situation, but that's an example of being all in as a consumer. That's
Well,
a
they
great example of that.
dropped it
No,
considerably, and I
well,
was
but
happy.
because what you showed is that you're a better risk, so a better risk deserves a better rate. That's what that really is.
Yeah, and I agree with you. So I wanted to ask you, and this just popped into my head while we're talking too. What about people, and listen, with all the problems, the weather-related problems that this country has experienced this year alone,
Mhm.
I have no doubt that there are people who simply cannot get insurance for whatever
Yeah.
reasons. What
Yep.
do you tell them? What can they do?
They need to continue the fight. Being told that they can't get insurance is not the answer. Um, in California, in the Western United States, there's a lot of brokers that do not have access to markets. So what happens is they simply say they can't get insurance for the consumer.
Oh,
You have to keep checking. You have to check. You have to check. Every time you're being told no, it's like almost the old sales thing. Being told no, every time you're told no, you're that much closer to a yes. So you have to continue to watch, work on, and work through. Because there are solutions out there.
there are. I love that. And I'm one of those pig-headed people. You tell me no,
Mhm.
I'm like, yeah, watch this.
Yep. Yep.
I will just keep on calling or email
Yep.
until I get a person who says, sure, we can help you. Oh, good. Let's
Exactly.
talk. I don't give
Exactly.
up. I will just keep
Exactly.
on going because now you made me mad.
Yep.
Well,
No.
good. Well,
Yep.
listen, this has been a fascinating conversation. It always is. But
Yep.
before I let you go, Robert,
Yep.
what do you want our audience to know? I mean, just kind of encapsulate it for us, if you would.
Really, what it is that, as I mentioned a bunch of times in this, is change. Change is coming. We're working through to help consumers through the Western United States. I do think the programs that we're building at WOWs is is going to make the changes and help make the changes necessary, not just for the Western United States, but be copied throughout the United States. And and the reason why I say to consumers out there is that we're working this way is because the alternative is not a choice. The alternative is no insurance, or a a premium that's so egregious that none of us can afford it and we lose our homes. So we need to continue this fight. We're going to win this fight. And anyone that wants to reach out to me, you can find me very simply at WOWS Insurance, WOWS insurance.com, or you can email me at robert@wowsinsurance.com.
Ask you where people could reach you. Well, listen, everybody. In this episode, Robert Feldman, CEO and co-founder of WOWS Insurance, WOWS, all capital, discussed the fire insurance crisis in California, but it was kind of a run on of what we talked about the last time he was here. And with 28 years of experience, he stressed the need for innovation in all industries. Your home insurance rates have risen. We need innovation. And I think that's one of the big important things that we talked about. And he highlighted how WOWS is utilizing technology and big data to create a new blueprint for fire insurance. And we talked about all kinds of solutions. So go back, take notes, and do what he says. If you can't get insurance, keep on going, keep trying. We talked a bit about practical advice for homeowners, non-renewal notices, rate encouraging them to review their coverage. There's a lot of things that he's got that he can share. So go find him. And if you found this conversation valuable, connect with Robert on LinkedIn or visit wowsinsurance.com and let him know that you heard him on this podcast. And also, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts and why. Your feedback helps me reach more listeners and continue sharing important insights like this one. So thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next week. Robert, thank you so much. It is
Thank
always a
you.
pleasure.
Always a pleasure. If I don't
Thank
talk to
you.
you sooner, have a great and safe holiday
You
season.
too.
All
You
right.
too. We'll
Thank
talk
you.
again. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Get your voice heard. If you would like to launch your own far-reaching podcast, contact Denise Griffitts at yourofficeontheweb.com and go to the podcast tab.